Introducing the F16, the Maverick of the skies. Because who needs a highway when you can fly at Mach 2? This fighter jet is so nimble, it once did a barrel roll just to avoid a traffic jam. And let's talk about its delivery service. The F-16 doesn't just drop packages. It delivers freedom like it's Amazon Prime on afterburners. Rumour has it, when the F-16 flies by, bald eagles shed a single tear of admiration. It's so sleek that even Chuck Norris called to ask for flight lessons. The F-16 doesn't break the sound barrier. It politely asks it to step aside. It's the only jet that can perform a loop-de-loop and leave the laws of physics questioning themselves. So, move over, Mr. F4. The F-16 is here to make flying look cooler than a penguin on ice skates. It's not just a fighter jet, it's a stand-up comedian with a PhD in delivering freedom. And remember, when the F-16 takes off, even gravity gives it a standing ovation. Hello Mental Gen. Seeing as some of you guys really liked the last video in this series, I decided to do another one. Look, I know the views and the likes aren't amazing, but come on man, I just started this channel, give me a break. In this video, we'll be talking about the variants of the F-16s, their strengths and weaknesses, the loadouts, and as well as how to effectively play this thing. First, I would like to talk about the 6004 different variations of the F-16 in-game. So let's start with the variants. First, in the American tech tree, you have the F-16A. The A is the ground attack version of the F-16, or the early version of the F-16, and can only carry AIM-9Ls, meaning that it's quite limited when it comes to air RB. However, when it comes to ground RB, you can carry a multitude of ground munitions, and you also have the benefit of being the lightest F-16A in the American tech tree. Well, technically the lightest F-16. Now we move on to the F-16 ADF, essentially the opposite to the F-16A, where its main priority is air-to-air combat. This means that it can carry, as well as carrying the AIM-9L, it can carry the AIM-7, but in terms of ground RB, it can only carry dumb bombs. And then the final version that you can find in the American tech tree is the F-16C. It is the latest edition, and it has upgraded avionics being the HMD, and the radar, which is the APG-68, which is a very, very powerful radar, especially in real life. And its air data is pretty damn good. It can carry the AIM-9M as well as the Sparrow, but in the modification tree that you'll see that the 9L is actually a beginner missile, which is still very good, and it's probably gonna do you pretty well in the long run, up until you get the 9M, that is at least. The optimal loadout would be to carry 2 AIM-7s and 4 AIM-9Ms. However, personally, I prefer to carry 1 Sparrow and 5 AIM-9Ms, because I believe that IR missiles are kind of the meta right now, and radar missiles, because everybody flies low, they're not really all that amazing. Unless you're on about the R-27ER, which is, we all know that missile very well. You can still deliver freedom in exactly 9 different ways. You can either take 4 GBU-24s, 4 2,000-pound bombs, 4 Mark 84 bombs, 12 Mark 82 bombs, 12 500-pound bombs, 4 GBU-12, and 114 Mighty Mouse rockets. It doesn't end there. Or 38 Hydra rockets, and you can also take a note from Grandpa's book and decide to turn on the rice cooker and decide they need some freedom by delivering them 8 napalm bombs at Mac Jesus. This is America, just in case completely wiping off the face of the earth doesn't do the trick, turning them into a meaningless speck of dust just because I slightly disagree with our values, well. Moving on to the other variants of the F-16, you have the F-16AJ, which doesn't exist, which is complete and utter bullshit. Then you also have the F-16NETS, the Israeli F-16, the Jewish one. It's debatably the best flying F-16 in the game, apart from maybe the AJ, again, which doesn't really exist, but it has a really good armament, Python 3s and stuff. The F-16AJ is basically just an ADF, but for Japan, but also flies better, which is bullshit. And then you have the F-16MLU, which is essentially just an ADF, but for China. Like, there's nothing really special about it. I mean, kind of just like the Chinese people in general. And now we move on to the strengths and weaknesses of the vehicle. Number 1, very good energy retention. It's important to keep your speed at top tier, and everybody knows this at this point. I don't really need to talk about this bit. Number 2, Gaijin decided to actually give it a flight model. With the old flight model, at high speeds the controls used to get bricked like me every time I saw your mum. Number 3, amazing acceleration. The thing goes so fast, I mean, how else are they going to deliver freedom at Mach 2 with any Middle Eastern country that mildly disagrees with their values? And the US at that moment just so happened to need more oil. I mean, priorities, am I right? In all honesty, I can only say the AIM-7 really. The missile isn't bad, but isn't great either. If the enemy isn't hot, for those of you that aren't nerds, that means if the enemy isn't coming towards you, or if simply the enemy isn't 2008 Megan's Fox, it's a joke. Funny. The missile becomes like Joe Biden and essentially forgets what it's doing or why it's even doing it. Moving on to the tactics, you play the f16C pretty much however you want, really. The f16A and the f16C are really good for CAS options, but the ADF and the AJ and the NATs are all good for air options. But if you want the best of both worlds, the f16C Block 50 is the best overall f16 in the game, and maybe even the best jet in the game. Apart from my glorious MiG-29G, because I fucking say so. And that brings us to the end of that. Don't be weird. Subscribe, like, and share because you know Giga Chads do that shit. And if you don't, the snail will come for you and take all of your SL and golden eagles. See you later, fuckers.